Firstly, what did Marcus say about April? About 420? And then, military experience. There isn't a whole lot to say. Oh, actually, you know what? So, I guess I can say why I quit the military. I got into the military because I wanted to shoot people and do it legally and get paid for it. Coming from Chicago, being a gang member, and just being a man, just being a masculine entity, I've always felt the need for violence. Not in like I'm not the type of guy who goes outside and just gets into fights and shit like that. On the contrary, I'm extremely non-confrontational until I am. Once I am, it's going to happen. But I've always felt like, as a man, it's like your duty to be the one to commit the violence, like on behalf of the women and children. So the only job to do that in this world is like the military. Everything else would be illegal, right? And I wasn't trying to be illegal. I had a woman, I had a child. I was also trying to have a career and et cetera, and all that good stuff. But I remember being in the communications talk one night with a specialist. Can't remember his name. Big guy, strong guy. Lots of, he knew a lot about working out and being in shape, and he was giving me tips, and I literally had my notebook out. Like, I was literally taking all his tips and everything. Like, we were just working out the whole night. Like, we were just in there sweating because we were supposed to be there till like 8 in the morning, wide awake. So we were just working out and shit. And I remember on Fox News, the TV always stayed on the news in that room. And on Fox News, there was a video, became a pretty popular video, of a helicopter, an Apache in Iraq. Mind you, this is like 3 months before we were supposed to get deployed. We were all excited. I was excited. I couldn't wait to go. We were supposed to go to Afghanistan. But there was an Apache in Iraq that had lit up a birthday party. They saw, grown men sitting outside smoking cigarettes. They had like boxes and things like this, and they thought they were like planting IEDs or something. Mind you, this Apache's like fucking like 10 miles away. Like, but they can see dumb long, so they don't really know what's going on over there. They just see a lot of people, including a lot of men standing outside smoking cigarettes outside this one building. And they're bringing boxes and things like that into the building. They couldn't tell the boxes were wrapped from that distance. They were presents. There was a surprise party for a little boy turning like 10 or something like that. Or a little girl, I can't remember, it was a child, small child. And they thought they were, planning some shit, so they got permission, and they just lit everything up. They killed everything that moved there. And I remember watching that and thinking, like, they have no idea what's actually going on over there. Like, that's not tactically sound. Like send us in. Send in the ground forces. Send someone in there to figure it out before you just start shooting people from fucking like miles away with a fucking chopper. Like, and I just thought it was crazy. But that's all I thought, was like, it was crazy, And then they tell the whole story, and it turns out it was a birthday party. A van pulls up and tries to like get some of the people in to take them to the hospital, and they light the van up. Right? Humvees finally pull in like minutes later. Soldiers are getting out, and they're checking all the bodies and stuff. They go to one of the medics goes over to the van and starts freaking out because there's 2 kids inside. There's a little girl with a bullet hole through her fucking belly, but still, I think she was still awake and crying and like making very pained sounds. And her little brother with a birthday hat on, like a birthday crown, is sitting next to her in complete shock, holding her hand. Just sitting there in shock. This was his birthday party they were supposed to be going to. His whole family's dead. His little sister's dying next to him. Every man in his family is dead. His mother's dead in the front seat. His father's dead in the front. Everyone but his sister is dead, and she's dying right next to him. Happy birthday, nigga. And I remember hearing that and just being livid with the would you even ask for permission to fire? Like, what is wrong with you? And I just remember, and then the specialist I was with, the guy, I liked the guy. He was a cool dude, right? And I just remember him saying, yeah, fuck those Hajis. And him saying that flipped something in me. And I wanted to kill him. Like, he became my enemy in that moment. Like, that's a child. It's a family. Those people aren't combatants. That's not the enemy. That's children and their family. This kid is going to his birthday party. You know, and the medic who found the kids in the van was trying to work on the kids. And his sergeant is just screaming at him, like, what the fuck are you doing? Pull security, like, fuck those kids, da-da-da. And he's like, fuck you. Like, I'm a medic, bro, and there's 2 children here. Like, you're telling, like, no, I'm going to do what I do. Like, and he disobeys orders to help the child, to help the children, because one's in shock, one's shot. And, you know, they get them into, like, an ambulance or whatever, and they get them towards a hospital, and then he pulls security. And his sergeant is, like, reaming him for it, like, for fixing up that little girl. Like, he should have just let her lay there and just fucking suffer and die. And I remember the specialist, I cannot remember this man's name, is like completely in agreement with the sergeant. Like, yeah, you know, you gotta worry about yourselves and you gotta da-da-da. And I'm like, are you fucking joking, bro? We're soldiers, we're expendable. Like, they should have went in there to begin with. But because they were so pussy, instead of them going in there on the ground to verify what was happening, that chopper just lit everything up, left nothing to verify, and then sent them in to make sure they were safe. Like, what the fuck do you sign up for? Like, you're a soldier, bro. You're infantry. You know what I'm saying? Like, and you're afraid of going in there to see what's actually going on, like, before you just kill an entire party of people. An entire bloodline wiped out viciously. Only one left behind is the boy, because the sister looks like she's going to die. I don't know if she survived or not. I don't really have the heart to look into that any further and see what happened with the kids. But when he said that shit next to me, fuck those Hajis, and you gotta protect yourself. And he was telling me this shit, like I should be taking these notes. Like, what that sergeant said was right. The helicopter pilot was right. Like, and he's just like, I don't know if he could sense it in me or something, but he's like really trying to like hammer this shit home. And I stayed silent. I didn't say shit. The next day, because this just came out, it was big news. Like, it was and if you're in the military, it was big. I don't know if regular people gave a fuck, but in the military, it was big news that this shit got out. This video was out, and, you know, we looked bad. Next day, everybody comes in at PT. I'm like, you know, it gets brought up. And I'm listening, and it's just me and one other black kid in this whole company. It's literally me and one other black kid. And so we're the only people with brown skin in there. So we just automatically feel a different way about the people we're fighting, where it's like, we don't have like a racist thing towards them, but of course they teach you that shit in like basic training and in infantry school, and where it's like, you know, fuck the Hajis, you know, all that type of shit. Haji. Like, everything's Haji. You're dehumanizing. They're just fucking brown Durkas on the other side of the world. And for me, you know, I could say Haji and fuck Haji and all that other stuff, but when I said that, I wasn't, in my mind, I wasn't thinking that child. I wasn't thinking like all Arabs everywhere. I was thinking Wahhabists. I was thinking the fucking crazy Islamists who want to do wild shit, you know? I'm like, yeah, I'll go out there and murk them, even though I don't necessarily believe in the government, and I don't necessarily, you know, because even at that age, I didn't fuck the government. I was running with gangs and shit. We was running from the feds ourselves. Like, so it wasn't like I was a government guy or anything like that. They didn't have me bought in. It was just like, how can I freely go shoot people and get paid for it and shoot bad guys? And I'm like, well, they're shooting bad guys. Like, yeah, we might not be the best guys, but those guys are really bad. Like, so I can go do that job, no problem, you know? And when I saw that, and then we're at PT and people are talking about it, and they're all on board with the specialist. And I mean, they're laughing about it. They're like, man, only a few more rounds and both those kids would have been dead too. Bloodline ended. Leaving that kid alive, Now that kid's gonna grow up, be angry, and he's gonna blow shit up too. And I'm just like, you know, part of me is like, that's kind of true. Because I always say it to my little brother, I say it to other bloodlines. If you don't finish the family, like, but I'm talking about elites. Like, if I go fight Bill Gates and kill Bill Gates, I'm gonna have to kill his kids too. Because they're not going to. You understand? Like, elites and their families are raised a certain way to carry out their bloodline's goals. You gotta wipe. If you're gonna wipe out the Rothschilds, you gotta wipe out all the Rothschilds. Like, you can't leave a Rockefeller behind because they will be a Rockefeller, you know. And all that shit now goes to them. All their family's wealth, everything goes to them because you left them behind. So now this one person could be like the, you know, it's so yeah, bloodlines. But I'm like, this is some poor kid in Iraq. This isn't some fucking elitist. This isn't like this is some poor fucking kid. You didn't have to kill his family to begin with. Period. But they're like, oh, well, you got to kill the whole bloodline. You don't just leave the kid behind. I'm like, bro, you didn't have to kill his family to begin with. They were nobodies. They were just some poor folks in Iraq trying to get by while we were bombing the fuck out their country. Like, they weren't even fighting. There was no evidence of that family, even afterward, from what the news was saying, that that family was involved in anything. They were just fucking people going to a birthday party. And now their entire family's dead, and all the people who were there with them. Because, you know, there's friends and stuff, too. So really, multiple families getting fucking destroyed, right? So, with all these people saying this shit, and I noticed, the only other person who wasn't in agreement was the one other black kid. And I just realized how well programmed they had these white folks in the military. And it came to me, I was like, I think the only reason he and I aren't in agreement is because growing up black, growing up in the hood, growing up poor, we're Hajis. You know what I'm saying? Like, we are that kid. We know what that family is like. Like, it's a different feeling. It's like we can relate to, like, this. To us, it's like these are the police now. You know, these are the feds talking about what just happened to, like, some black family somewhere in some ghetto or some hood in America. And they're like, yeah, well, fuck them. Like, and that's kind of what it felt like. Like, all of a sudden, I could fully relate to the kid. I was that kid in that van. My empathy clicked way the fuck all the way back on. Like, and I was that kid in that van. I was that little boy. And I raged for him. And I remember looking at the one other black kid. I cannot remember any of these people's names. One other black kid in our fucking whole company. And I remember we caught eye contact, and he, like, shook his head no. Like, almost like, don't say nothing, don't do nothing, but also like, yeah, I know, it's fucked up. And after PT, I remember linking with him and being like, am I crazy for not agreeing with any fucking thing these guys are saying right now? Like, you know, like, and he's like, nah, bro. He's like, I'm right there with you. That this is like, he's like, it's like we're not watching the same video. It's like we're not getting the same report. It's like we're living in two different worlds when we're experiencing the same thing. He goes, I feel like that kid. He goes, they feel like the helicopter pilot. They feel like the sergeant. Now, mind you, the chopper pilot came out like 2 days later and was crying, and he was distraught. He needed therapy. Like, he murdered an entire family. He had no, in his world, you know, because he'd been out there for months. He'd been shot at with RPGs. It's like, so he was, you know, in defense of the chopper pilot, he knew not to be flying over areas like that. And one of them held something that he thought might be an empty RPG, like an RPG without the fucking, the actual rocket part in it. So he was not trying to go over there. And he also was trying to protect his people on the ground that he thought would be riding into a hornet's nest. When he found out he murdered an entire family of people, like multiple families, they said, like, according to the reports, he instantly started throwing up, like, crying, and he needed a psych hold. Like, he couldn't handle what he just did. So I was like, I felt bad for him, too. You know what I'm saying? Like, I felt so bad for the chopper pilot, but at the same time, like, you dumbass, like, why are you pulling triggers on people without verification? Like, and I get it, that puts you in danger, but that's your fucking job. Your job is to be in danger, chopper pilot. Their job as soldiers on the ground is to be in danger. That's what they fucking signed up for. It's what we all signed up for. You know, like, we signed up to be, like, I didn't sign up to be a cook. You know what I'm saying? I signed up as infantry. He signed up as a chopper pilot. They were fucking, cavalry. My brain, like my military brain is gone. It's been like 15, 16 years. But I'm like, we signed up for that, you know? You don't just light people up like that. But he and I, the black kid and I, we saw ourselves in that child. We saw ourselves. None of the folks around us could see themselves as that child. They could only see themselves as the chopper pilot until he came out crying and shit. And then all of a sudden he was like a bitch, right? And then they all saw themselves as the sergeant, agreeing with the sergeant. They couldn't stand the medic. And I'm like, what is wrong? Anyone who had empathy in the city, anyone who exhibited empathy, like when the chopper pilot had no, like just drilling people, they were cheering for him. When he came out crying and throwing up and needed therapy and shit, he's a bitch now. They didn't even feel bad for him. Like, are you kidding me? Like, y'all was cheering for this nigga 2 days ago. Like, the sergeant, they cheered for him. The medic who was helping the kids, they were like, oh, that's bad tactics. Like, he should be pulling security. Don't worry about the kids. You need to worry about your, like, anyone who showed empathy in that situation was drilled by the people around us. Completely roasted. And that was the topic of the week. Every day, niggas talked about that for like 4 or 5 straight days until I was just like, I'm not going back. I left, went home to my mother's, and when I didn't show back up, you know, I got the call, like, where the fuck you at? I'm like, yeah, I'm not coming back. I'm all set. Y'all ain't for me. And they were like, yeah, no, it doesn't work that way. Like, you're coming back, whether you want to or not. We'll send the police. We'll send the military police. Like that's not how this works. And I said, well, you have my jacket. You know what I've been trained to do. You want to send anyone? Send them with body bags. Bare minimum, one for me, because I'm not going with you without y'all killing me. Like at that point, they were my enemy. Like, that's how fast I switched. Over that week, I was like, these are my enemies now. Like, this government, this military, this is the worst one in the world. Like, it's, because that week I started really studying. Like, I didn't really study the military before. I didn't really care. I didn't study the government that deeply before. I didn't care. I was more studying the reality. Like, I went into Matrix stuff and God and different religions and things like that way before I went into conspiracy theory. Like, a lot of people hit conspiracy theory and then end up in spirituality and occult and all that other stuff. I ended up from religion, and based on being black, when I was 12 years old, I was also studying racism and prison sentences and anything that had to do with, like, black studies. So at 12, you know, everything kind of opened up for me, from my experiences that you know about to witchcraft, occult stuff, magic stuff, you know, sexual stuff, to Matrix type stuff, because of without having a word for it at that time, because I hadn't seen the Matrix yet, but like from the Bible, like reading of this reality is created and there's beings outside of it that put other beings like us inside of it. And then I started studying other religions and Egyptian religion and Hinduism and things along those lines, and especially the other Abrahamic faiths, Judaism, Islam. That is also what led me to hate Wahhabists. Studying Islam, like, I realized Wahhabists are horrible. Like, those dudes in Saudi Arabia, they're terrible people. And those are the terrorists. Those are the Al-Qaeda members and stuff. You know, Osama bin Laden and them are Wahhabists. Like, so I had a hard-on hatred for them since I was like 12. And now, mind you, when I was 13, 9/11 happened. You know, like, and I didn't look into it when I was 13. And when I was 13, I ended up on punishment for like 2 weeks. And the only thing I was allowed to watch was like the news, because the war was happening. And I watched that intently. And of course, it's mainstream media. I'm going through like 4 different news channels and the military channel, getting all the propaganda. You know, like at 13 years old. And I was intent on it. Like, and I had always wanted to be military or an assassin, or like when I was a kid, I wanted to either be an assassin, a fighter pilot, or a WWF wrestler. So I realized being an assassin, probably not going to happen. Like, the type of like, you need to be, that's just not going to happen. WWF wrestler went out the window, you know, by the time I was, you know, middle school. The only thing left was fighter pilot. So I had my mom bring me to the recruiter's office to talk about what it takes to do that. And then I realized you need either 4 years of college or 4 years in either the Air Force or Navy, depending on where you're going to fly jets. To be a true fighter pilot in the Army, it's actually harder because it's easier to be a fighter pilot in the Navy or in the Air Force. In the Army, it was harder to become a fighter pilot. Like, I got all the information. I was like, damn, I'm not doing that either. I guess I'm just going to shoot guns. Like, and I remember thinking that as a kid, like, because I also had a friend named Stephen Lamoureux. His father was airborne infantry, fought in Desert Storm and whatnot, and he used to tell us stories. We saw his medals, met some of his buddies, and so his father was the only father in our neighborhood. Everyone else around us was raised by a single mother. My mom, my next door neighbors, our other neighbor, everyone in our neighborhood was raised by single mothers. And I mean everyone. The only people, we had two fathers. Steve's father, and then right next door we had these three older white guys who were older, cool ass dudes, Jared, Adam, and Chad. One was actually named Chad. And their dad, Mike. And but Mike was he's a mechanic guy. He'd come home and he'd just kind of be in the house drinking beer, smoking cigarettes. We never really saw Mike like that. We saw him going to and from work. That was about it. But Steve Lamoureux's dad, he had a truck. He used to take us to the movie place to rent movies and video games. And it was literally right down the road. So we'd all hop in the back of the bed of his truck and drive down there like we were in the country or something. So, we liked his dad. He was the neighborhood's dad, and he was an airborne infantry soldier. And, so it was a lot of things had geared me in the direction of one day I'll end up in the military, right? Then at 13, 9/11, all that good stuff happens, but I ended up kind of getting kicked out of school over this big brawl that happened, and I ended up elbowing a cop in the face. Didn't know it was a cop behind me who grabbed me. Didn't know at all. I just turned and got to work. When I elbowed him so hard in the face, he dazed. He fell down. I didn't knock him out, but he fell on his butt and was clearly dazed. Cause I caught him clean in the jaw with an elbow. 14-year-old spiky elbow. Hard as I could throw it. Cause I thought it was one of the enemies, and again, racism stuff. There was a baseball team, all white boys, and there was this black girl, and she was dating one of them, and they got into a fight in the hallway, and we could all hear them fighting. They're arguing, and then the white boy just came. He just got out of pocket and was like, "This is why you don't date niggers." And it was so sudden and random. I was caught off. Even his girl, that he was dating, she just went silent, she couldn't believe he just said that. And then there's this kid, Nick Abatello, light skinned, mixed breed. If you look at him from a distance, you think he's a white boy. When you get up close, you're like, this kid's mixed with something. But he took super offense to it. He's the only mixed one in his family. Everybody else is black. So he's black, and as far as he's concerned, he's full blown black. So he took extreme offense, and he's a violent kid. He liked to fight, so he was one of those. So he was like, "Fuck, did you just say, white boy?" And he was like, and then the white boy looks at him like, "Who the fuck are you talking to, white boy?" He's like, but then Nick takes his backpack off, and he's like, "Say that shit one more time. Say that shit one more time." And to the white boy's defense, not defense, but credit, he did. He was like, "That's why you don't date nigger." And I mean, he said it right in Nick's face. Oh, that was brave, because Nick uppercutted the fuck. As soon as he said it, his jaw went to the ceiling, and he was asleep. The fight started because of this one kid and his girlfriend fighting, and what he said, nobody was going to get involved until he said that to her. We didn't give a fuck. Whatever, they're fighting, that's between them. We didn't care. We didn't, till he said that. And then when Nick uppercutted him to the ceiling, and the kid just dropped to his knees and fell asleep, the whole baseball team, because they were all there in their baseball uniforms, in their cleats and everything. Some of them was kicking too, because they was all getting ready to go to baseball practice. This is right at the end of the day of school. We're all getting ready to go home, and I mean, they flooded him. So I instantly ran into the crowd. 3 of my friends ran into the crowd, and then we had this African dude named Suleiman, and Suli. We had a group called the Lost Boys, which was pretty much, if you were black or Hispanic in the school, you were a Lost Boy. That's kind of how it was. And so he sees what's going on, and he yells in the halls just at the top of his lungs, "Lost Boys!" And while we're getting this shit jumped out, because we all jumped, 4 of us jumped in, but there's 20 of them. we are not winning. We're not winning. And all of a sudden there's just like a rush of black and brown students that just come running down and they see what's happening. They just come rushing in, and now it's this giant like race war in the fucking hallway. And I find like niggas get thrown out, like they're just throwing people off me because I was under a pile by this, but like we was getting jump. Like I think I was right next to Nick, just getting beat up. Just ran into an ass whooping, and but once they start getting up, and I get up and I start throwing hands, and I'm going hard, right? Because I'm mad now, like I'm bleeding, I'm upset. I'm in pain. Somebody like stomped my leg with a cleat. I felt like it was damn near broken. Like, I'm glad it didn't break, but man, that hurt a lot. And then I get grabbed real hard and I mean, this was a strong grab to the point where it activated like the fear in me. Like I thought I was about to get choked out or something. And I just spun with the absolute quickness, swinging my elbow over the arm and just elbowed him right perfectly in the jaw. And he fell on his butt, and it was the cop, the school cop, and my eyes went wide. Like I was like, oh shit, and I just took off. I literally just took off running, right? Everybody scattered and shit. But it was pretty clear who was involved. And then, they got some of the baseball kids because they were all going to go to baseball practice. It wasn't like they really couldn't run anywhere. And of course, they told on everyone. So the next day, I'm in school walking through the hallway like, yeah, I didn't get caught. Okay, all right. And then, hey, and I turn back and it's the cop. He's like, don't you fucking run from me. And I'm like, fuck. Because he grabs me by my fucking afro. I was like, damn, time not to have my hair braided, Grabs me by my fucking friend, drags me to the fucking office. It's like, this is the fucking kid who fucking elbowed me yesterday. They call my mom. She doesn't answer. She's not at home. She's at work. They leave a voicemail, and they basically tell her I'm suspended until I come back with her. Like, I'm suspended I think it was at least 10 days, and after that, I have to come back with her. I can't come back to school, like, until they have a meeting directly with her. Which is crazy, because it's not like I had some sort of bad record with this or something. It's like, but I'm the one who elbowed the cop, of course. That, my luck, the cop happened to grab me out of the crowd. So I got home first. I erased the message, and I just started skipping school for like 3 months. Of course, she finally she went to get me from school one day for some reason to get me early, or she called the school to tell them she was going to pick me up early, and they're like, yeah, he hasn't been here like 3 months. Like, we've been leaving you messages that I was deleting. Like, we were getting ready to send the truancy officer out to you, like, because he should have been back like 3 months ago. He was suspended for 10 days and couldn't come back without you. And she's like, I didn't know about any of this, right? So it gets to the point where she's like, nah, it's cool. You don't gotta go back to school. Like, I go home, like, I see her later that day some way, somehow. Oh, no, we went back to the school to pick up, we were skipping school, and we went to pick up my girlfriend, my baby mama at the time, before she was my baby mama. Went to pick her up, and while we were there, we saw Mr. Barnes, who was the truancy officer. And he's like, Mr. Anderson, Mr. Resto, we haven't seen you in a while, me and my boy Tito. And the way he talked is funny, because he would say Mr. Anderson, and he sounded like Agent Smith. Now, at this time, I didn't have that reference, because I don't think The Matrix was even out yet. But later on, when I watched it, I was like, damn, he sounds just like Mr. Barnes, because that's literally how Mr. Barnes, Mr. Anderson, Mr. Resto, we haven't seen you in a while. Like, that's how he talked. And he'd chase you down. He was like an agent, like real talk. And he was a cop. He was the truancy officer, but he was also he's the track coach of the school and a former track star, Rhode Island track star. So you really couldn't outrun the nigga. So there was no running. Like, and it was the end of school anyway. Like, it was like, he ain't chasing us. Like, and now, he like started shooting the shit with us, kind of. What you doing? It was like, picking up my girl. She's a good student. Like, she still goes to school. Like, he's like, you should learn from that. Like, yada yada, blah blah blah. Right? He's like, oh, by the way, before you go, your mother called earlier. What? Yeah. Apparently, she seems to think you've been in school this whole time. We made sure to inform her otherwise. I was like, fuck. Right? So, I went about my business. I didn't have no cell phone at this point, so I just kind of acted like I didn't know, just so I could spend the day. I was like, this is the last day I'm going to see y'all niggas. Like, for my mother murders me, right? And so finally go home later, and she's calm as fuck. And she's like, "So you ain't been to school, huh?" I'm like, "No." And, yeah. She's like, "That's cool." And she just goes like, I'm like, "All right, whatever, normal night." I go to bed. I'm like, "That's weird. I don't go to school the next day." And then like the next day, or like a few days later on the weekend or something, she tells me, "Oh, by the way, this summer you're moving with your father." I was like, "Wait, what?" "Yeah, you're going to Chicago." Like, "I'm gonna live there?" Like, "Yeah, I can go there like every summer. I'd be out there, but I'm gonna live there. Like, that's gonna be my home now." "Yep, you gonna live there because can't get your shit right out here. So maybe we'll send you out there and see what happens and get your mind right." That was a mistake, but that's how I ended up in Chicago. But you see, like my upbringing, we had one father in the neighborhood. He was a soldier. Racist things did occur. I remember even we actually had like the only KKK people in our entire town was this one house that was in Elder Baloo. That was the cop neighborhood next to our projects. Like, if you go through the woods of our projects, you walk out into the most affluent neighborhood in our city, which is so weird. It's like connected right to the projects, and all the cops live in that area. And it was the only place where they had like real, full blown, well known, out and about racists. And we ended up fighting fights with those kids and things like this. So we had these experiences. And my mother was, she's always been like a Democrat, a liberal. Um, she's a Martin Luther King, Barack